This is your captain speaking. Thank you for flying with Titania Airlines. We are currently running into some turbulence, mainly clipping issues due to horrible coding, so please stand by while we are trying to wiggle free from invisible walls. Please enjoy the complimentary soft drinks and keep your seatbelts fastened. We will continue our journey as planned.
In Warframe you have a myriad of different options with which you define your playstyle. It all starts, of course, with the choice of your Warframe, and the game has tons of those, each offering you a different set of 4 abilities and a passive. Plus, on top of that, they all have different stats like armor, health, energy, shield, etc. The combination of those can significantly influence whether you want to be a stealthy player, a tank, a damage-dealing red fragile glass cannon, or a supporter. Of course, there are Warframes that become popular in the community because they excel in certain areas over their similar counterparts. Due to this meta developing, some of the choices you have in-game actually vanish under the masses of Excaliburs and Rhinos you'll see in your groups. In this series of YouTube videos, I want to show off some of the lesser played frames that don't necessarily get the attention they deserve. I'll call the series Forgotten Frames, and in this first installment I will take a closer look at Titania. And yes, I will use the Shakespearean way of pronouncing her name, call her like the 4th group transition metal all you want. The reason I picked Titania for this video is that with the release of Plains of Eidolon, there suddenly was a surge of more and more people picking Titania. I never really thought about her before, so I was intrigued and looked a little closer into what this little fairy can really do. I know, fairy. That sounds like a cute little fragile thing, and frankly, it's true. In her normal Warframe form, Titania has no more than 65 armor on top of her 740 points of health and shield with fully upgraded vitality and redirection mods. If you play that in your daily sortie or even in an Eidolon fight, you're basically a one-tap wonder and your flappy little wings burst faster than a balloon hugging a cactus on a hot summer day on Albuquerque. Her coolness only unfolds once you use her abilities. Titania gains a 50% evade chance once she activates her Razor Wing form. Her Warframe will shrink quite a bit and her wings will unfold, enabling her to fly around like an archwing. While in air, her little Razor Wing drones divert attention from enemies, and she can shoot everything from a distance with the deck's Pixia. Or she can attack with the Diwata, her sword. But I will talk more about these weapons later. Additionally, Titania can buff herself and her team, and at the same time debuff all enemies around her. For example, she can gain a damage reflection buff and reduce the accuracy of her adversaries, making her almost invulnerable if you count her evasion chance into that. And if all that is not enough, she has 2 crowd control options available to keep enemies from putting too much pressure on her. This little pixie really is a power horse if it comes to dishing out damage, and while she isn't exactly a tanky frame, she can avoid a lot of damage, even if multiple enemies are attacking. So how is it that we don't see dozens of Titanias every day? I think one part is that she doesn't excel at anything. She is a hybrid frame in every respect. She is kind of tanky, but once she takes damage she dies fast. She is a CC frame, but her range isn't really good for that. She is a buff frame, but she won't keep anyone alive for long. While you have her dishing out tons of damage, you can't build her for great crowd control, and vice versa. There are just not enough mod slots for that. The second reason why she isn't played much is she isn't easily accessible, so people understand how she's supposed to be played. Each ability of Titania's kit has several layers of mechanics, and the game, as Warframe usually is, won't hold your hand through understanding it. Most people probably shrugged her off as one of those weird frames with abilities you barely understood when reading the in-game description. Understanding and utilizing her abilities needs time and effort, which is one of the reasons I'm doing this video. A thorough guide on how this Warframe works without tons of text and data to sort through and without spending hours on research. Alright, so let's hop in and check out Titania's abilities, starting with their passive, the trampoline. It's a neat thing to have, but nothing to write home about, especially since it's kinda subtle and I've barely anyone seen ever using it. Every time you do a bullet jump like here, you'll leave one of these little surfaces on the ground. Every Warframe doing a bullet jump from that surface gets a little momentum boost. Now let's take a look at her first ability, the Spellbind. That's actually her first CC option. You can use it if heat gets too strong or if you really want to go full crowd control. What it does is, it's sending every enemy in a radius flying, immobilizing them completely. It has a decent runtime, but terrible range, as you can see here. Admittedly, that's at minus 60% range, which is what I get if I run my full damage build. Not that you'll piss off any melee player out there using that, because everything hit by Spellbind just flies off into the sunset and only drops back down once time runs out. It makes things kinda hard to hit, which can be annoying. If you use a build with more range, you're actually able to cover a lot of ground. Here I hit 20 charges with only one cast with about 30 seconds on the timer at plus 80% duration, which would be about enough to get rid of all of them if I really want. But that's not her only CC option. She has another ability that might come in handy in a different kind of situation. While Spellbind picks up everything on her cast time, her third ability, Lantern, soft CCs a certain area for its runtime. It's also less trolly compared to Spellbind, with all enemies staying on ground here. It turns one targeted enemy into a glowing floating buoy, which attracts enemies like a lamp attracts mosquitoes and moths. Enemies stop shooting and cuddle up around your lantern and get attacked by little razor drones. Still, if you don't run a straight up range build with Titania, the low radius might get you killed pretty fast. Compared to Spellbind, this ability has a slightly longer runtime and a 4 times higher effect radius. It is a decent CC option if you want to control a certain area, say a point at air interception or a defense objective. Okay, having the crowd control covered, we can hop over to the more juicy stuff. One ability that is slightly confusing at first is Tribute. The in-game description says you extract an offering from an enemy in form of a random ability buff, which is actually wrong. The buffs you get are very predictable and depend on the type of enemy you hit. So here I spawn a small set of different normal ranged enemies, in this case Corpus Moas. But there are the normal Moas, and then there are the different types of Eximus elites, you know, Arctic Eximus and so on. I hit one of the Moas with a spell, and you see how it gets yanked away and a ghost copy of the same Moa appears in its place. If I fly through it, I pop the phantom and I receive a buff, as you can see on the top right. It is the same symbol again, and it tells you the type of the buff you'll get, in this case dust. I can do this with any of these Moas, Eximus or not, and they'll each give me the same buff. If you look closely at the top right, you saw that it stacks up, from 10% at the start up to 50% for each enemy I collect a tribute from. Now that we know how the ability works in-game, let's check out the 4 different advantages we can get from it. I'll start with a set of Grineer. First, I'm picking out this fat guy here, a Bombard. The tribute I get from him is called Entangle. It slows all enemies in a 10-yard radius around me by 5% per stack up to 25% at 5 stacks. I can get this buff from any fat, tanky, heavy-hitting enemy type of every faction. Grineer have Henny Gunners and Bombards, Infested have Disruptors, Broodmothers and Boilers, and the Corpus have their Nullifiers, Texts and Bursas, to give you some examples. The second Grineer I pick out is the Scorpion. It drops me a Thorns tribute, which gives me and my team a damage reflection buff of 10% per stack up to 50%. You'll get this buff from any melee type enemy. Grineer provided with Scorpions and Power Fists, Infested have Chargers, Runners and Leapers, and the Corpus only have Prot Crewmen, which won't spawn over level 20, so good luck getting that. The Lancer gives me my favorite buff, Dust. It turns all enemies around me into lazy stormtroopers with reduced accuracy up to 50%. You get dust from all typical ranged enemies like Lancers, Troopers, Ballistas, Scorches or Flame Blades. The Infestation only has its 2 Moas and a Crawler, while Corpus has Crewmen, Snipers and of course the various different kinds of Moas. The last of the 4 tributes is Full Moon. It increases the damage of your and your teammates' companions by up to 75%, and it is given to you by all summoned enemy pets like Grineer Hyekas, Drugs or Infested Maggots, but you will also get it from Flying Ospreys or Infested Mutalist Ospreys. One thing I want to mention about Full Moon is, you really only get it from the pet Hyekas or Drugs, not from the masters who spawn them. Those provide you, as you can see here, the Entangle tribute. And now for her most important ability.
It's fairy time.
Prepare to defend. I'm in, Telos. This will take a moment.
Titania is the Shakespearean fairy queen. As such, she can transform into a fairy herself, fly around and be a hard target. The game calls this Razor Ring. As mentioned before, she gets a 50% evasion buff and 6 Rays of Light rounds attacking all enemies they can find and draw their fire. Let's start with the Dex Pixias, her primary weapons. Here you see the base stats as you enter them on warframebuilder.com. They have a base damage of 160, with the main portion of that being slash damage. Its base crit chance is 50%, the status chance is 25%. The weapon doesn't consume any ammo resource, instead it recharges the 60 shot magazine at a rate of 50 bullets per second once you stop shooting for a quarter second. Now that base damage maybe doesn't seem like anything amazing by itself, but it scales with your power strength. For example, if you have 175% power strength on your Warframe, the Dex Pixia base damage of 160 is multiplied with a factor of 1.75, resulting in 280 base damage. After that, all the mods from your primary weapon kick in, no matter if you use a shotgun or a rifle. The Dex Pixia has a decent status chance, so I like to build on that.
Mission complete. Excellent work, Tenno.
A good status chance shotgun would be the Tigris series. I picked a Tigris Prime for my build, but you can go with whatever suits you best. I use 4 double status mods. They add lower elemental damage, but add additional status chance, and we want to get that as high as possible. Combine the elements as you like. You might want to pick magnetic and gas for Corpus and Infested, or corrosive and blast for Grenier, whatever floats your boat. My usual go-to build is viral and radiation on a slash weapon. Of course you put point blank for flat damage on there, Hell's Chamber gives you multi-shot and hence better status chance, Vicious Spread gives you even more flat damage, although you get more spread, which doesn't really matter since the Tigers and the Dex Pixia hit like a truck with only one pellet. And finally, I put Sweeping Serration in for more slash damage, simply because I like to let my targets die on damage over time effect, and not waste a reload on an almost dead creature. This is a build that runs well with the Tigris itself, but we want to build something for the Dex Pixia as well. So we resort again to warframebuilder.com. On the page it should look like in this picture. I use an empty shotgun, enter the Dex Pixia stats, put all the mods in, and then I get a bunch of numbers regarding the damage properties of the gun. The most important ones are these. You got all your typical physical and elemental damage numbers, your critical chance, which didn't change because we are only doing pure damage, and then the status chance, which we can get up to 98% thanks to multi-shot and the double status mods. Down below you see 3 different damage values from which I usually like to look at the sustained DPS for comparisons. Now, again, this damage does not look super good, but that's only with 100% power strength. For comparison, I put together a quick chart to have the damage of the Dex Pixia at different strengths. From 100% to 200% we see that the damage just doubles. But even at only 150% power strength, you rival the Tigris Prime's DPS already, which is a pretty good turnout.
How dare you go against us? You will be purged.
For the Lotus.
Titania's melee weapon is the Diwata, a puncture-based sword. To mod the Diwata, I use the Telos Boltace as her base weapon. For a stance I use Gemini Cross here, because it's the only suitable PvE stance mod with a V polarity. We increase the flat damage with Pressure Point, as you do with any melee weapon, and add Spoiled Strike on top of that. Then we are trying to maximize puncture damage. I use these 3 mods to get the most out of it. To replenish HP in emergencies, I always have Lifestrike on my weapon. It saves me on a regular basis if I'm taking too many risks. Finally, I have Fury on so I get the lost attack speed from Spoiled Strike back and then some. And Primed Reach to improve the gap closer range for the sword. Which is not really a must-have, you can go with something like Reflex Coil for channeling efficiency to save some energy when healing yourself. The Telos Boltace is an overall good choice because it has a very useful slide attack that draws enemies into its vortex and staggers them. It will also knock them back and throw them on the floor on a second use, which can be a very quick and easy CC option should you ever need it. Note that the usual Telos Boltace build is for status chance, which isn't something that Diwata is super good at, as you can see on its base stats here. The low status and crit chance aren't anything you wanna build on, so either full puncture or pure elemental damage are your best bet. I went with puncture, since the dex Pixia is already elemental based in my case, so I want something with more physical damage. I use this weapon mostly to replenish some HP once in a while, less to do actual DPS anyway. Still, here's all the damage data you need in case you're interested. It's not a particularly good weapon, so I avoid usage of it whenever I can, especially since the close range always opens you up to melee attacks from enemies which you're not able to dodge even in Razorwing form. All that said, I want to finally show you the actual build I use on Titania. I'll start with my usual build, the Survivability DPS Fairy. The Fairy Queen comes with a V and D polarity factory setting, which I extend by 1 additional V and D each, as well as 2 dash polarities. As an aura mod I use Steel Charge for the capacity, but if you have Growing Power, go for it, it's awesome. Or if you want to spend an additional forma, feel free to get a dash slot for the Corrosive Projection or Energy Siphon mods. The Eximus slot will give me some extra power strength, which I complement with Transient Fortitude, which loses me some duration, but that's okay, still have a bunch left. And of course Intensify, winding up with a total of 200% power strength, which gives me a pretty large damage boost as I showed you earlier when talking about the Dex Pixia. For duration, I for one have Narrow-Minded on there, since I don't care about range in this build, and make up for the loss of Transient Fortitude and Fleeting Expertise by adding Continuity, ending up with more than 150% duration. The reason I built so much duration just to lose it all with corrupted mods is that I can get Fleeting Expertise running parallel to it with a balanced combination of both efficiency and duration, because both are needed to sustain keeping fairy time on constantly. Of course I use Flow to have a total of 400 energy on Titania, which means I can run Razorwing for about 3 minutes. Let's hop into the CC build I sometimes use, trying to get more range on the frame. Here I put some extra range in the Eximus slot, again run Transient Fortitude for strength, but instead of Narrow-Minded we see Overextended here, and instead of Intensify I use Streamline. There's far less corruption on duration in this build, so Continuity and Constitution make up for enough to break the 150% mark. I will only have 130% efficiency though, but that's okay, I won't have to spend all my time in fairy mode since I can CC many enemies with her abilities to not get hit all the time. All in all I run with 200% range here, which is in my experience enough to not get punched in the face constantly. You can also try and build something more balanced and avoid most of the corrupted mods on Titania if you want. I'm personally not a great fan of this, since she'll be mediocre in all of her abilities and I like to either raise some hell or keep anything from hitting me at all. But if you want to be able to use all of her abilities at the same time, you can build something like this. Coming back to the beginning and the question why I see more Titania picks than before, my guess is, at the beginning of terrorist hunting in Plains of Eidolon, a couple of people decided that Titania might actually be a good choice if you want to kill the big guy safely. And it's not a bad idea. Most of the terrorist attacks are ground-based area attacks that are supposed to knock you off your socks. Titania can avoid all that with just sitting in the air and pounding damage into him once his shield is down. But then there came the Chroma one-trick pony, and the destruction of Eidolons turned very one-sided. Still, if Digital Extremes decides to remove this one-shot build from Chroma, just pick your Titania, give her an assault rifle, I use an Opticore in this video here, and pack some radiation damage along with critical hit mods on there and blast his brains out. All in all, I really enjoyed playing around with Titania and explore all her possibilities. She's a jack of all trades and can be a great addition to any Warframe group due to her versatility in ways to play her. Still, she will not ever be the first choice for anything in-game, simply because there are many more specialized options out there. Also, her big damage output in Razorwing form is pretty much limited to status chance builds. Any pure damage or crit build will always be inferior due to the mediocre stats that Dex Pixia provides. Also, getting stuck on every other corner can be annoying, but after a while you know where you get stuck and avoid tricky areas. Still, playing her can be tons of fun. She's all about managing energy correctly so you don't have to hop out of Razorwing mode. Once you do that and no CC is running, you're little more than a hot air balloon to any high level enemy. So, thinking about which buffs you should take or refresh and stack up is important, as well as knowing which groups you have to CC and when to retreat and grab some blue orbs is key to her gameplay. If you liked this video and want to see more stuff I do, be sure to subscribe, follow me on Twitch or Twitter and get into contact with me. Hop on my stream once in a while or send me cute wombat pictures, I'm game for anything. Thank you for watching Dances with Wombats, have fun playing Titania, and if you don't, get her!